Yeah, and so it's like this paradigm, like the government's like gaslighting us through something like this, right?
Wait, the government's gaslighting us? What?
Yes. Unfortunately.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Please check us out online at couplessynergy.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Couples Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couples Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 20 years.
You know, everyone says you should work on your relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of
with the partner they fell in love with. On today's episode, we welcome Zac Martin. He is the director of the nonprofit Kids Deserve Dads. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today, Zac.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You know, your organization is really amazing and you know, doing some amazing things. And we definitely want to get into that and talk about, you know, where people can get an understanding of the organization and get connected. But before we do that, we want to understand your journey, like how you got there. So first, let's tell the audience here, it's all audio. How old are you?
I'm 42 years old.
42 years old. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the start of this whole journey and kind of where it came from.
Yeah, it started in, the organization started in November of 2017, but it was born out of having a son. My son Elijah was born in January of 2017, and his mother and I split up in June, July-ish time period, and not being able to see my son for a long time, and then having opportunities to connect with a lot of my friends and people I knew who had been through similar experiences, how prevalent that was, I thought it was wrong, and I wanted to help support kids having dads, and I knew how important it was for me to have a dad, and I wanted to be there for my son, and a system that was really designed to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to be in the role as I imagined and was designing my life to be.
Were you married to your son's mom?
I was not, no. And he was an accident, a beautiful accident, and maybe there are no accidents, right? So, but we were not married, no.
Were you on the birth certificate?
Yes, I was there the day he was born. We had split up, and after we split up for the final time, next to final time, and 4 days later, she told me she was pregnant. And I went back and continued a relationship with her to be there with my son, and was committed to making it work. And it takes two committed people to make a relationship work. And but I was there through his birth, and it was an amazing day. And then I was there every day with him for the first like 5 or so months of his life.
So did you go through any legal stuff in trying to figure out, you know, visitations and things like that?
Yeah, it was a 2.5 year legal, 2 year, 2.25 year legal experience, which really helped.
Longer than you guys were together, right?
Slightly less. It was a long, slow process to get through the court system, to even get into the court system, and just a bunch of legal loopholes to jump through, which take a bunch of time intentionally, and made it be, I mean, a long fight to just get to be actively involved in my son's life. And then we didn't find out the judge's decision for another 6 months after that. So it was like, it was 3 years after we split that we actually finally had some sort of legal framework around visitation and an order of what it would look like.
So, you know, when you're talking about the system, you know, designed in a way that really prevented you from being able to spend time with your son, be with your son, can you describe the system, you know, for those out there that aren't familiar with, you know, how it's structured?
Yeah, I mean, so the family court system is designed to give one person control over kids and their lives and another person to be a payer for kids. And they work on separating parents and divorces. And there are many different players in this system, the vast majority of which are lawyers, usually the petitioner's lawyer, the respondent's lawyer, and then a guardian ad litem in a lot of cases, and a judge. And that those people are there to help to split up the parties involved in an equitable fashion to divide the family.
Did
And
it end up being equitable?
well, equitable is really a tough term to describe. I would say it was definitely not equal, but the states incentivized through the Social Security Act of 1975 and Title 4D to have one person being a payer for kids while the other person collects money. And the collection of the money by the child support services business actually gets the state money from the federal government. And so there's a huge financial incentive for the states to divide families and not have equal parenting time for kids, but to give one parent control and cash and prizes, and the other parent to be the payer who supports the system that maintains this.
Wow.
So,
I was not aware of that.
um,
And, you know, this event that you went through, this was in the state of
Wyoming.
Wyoming. Okay. And are you aware of whether other states do things differently?
So there have been some changes in the last few years. 2018, Kentucky is the first state to pass a equal shared parenting law. And so in Kentucky, as long as there's not a history of domestic violence within the last year, and not just accusation, but actual like documentation of domestic violence within the last year, is presumed that both parents are fit and worthy of being parents to their kids. And since then, Arkansas and West Virginia have followed suit and gotten past shared parenting bills. So there are 3 currently who have shared parenting as a standard. The rest are not.
That's very interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, you think that, you know, more of the states with more progressive cities would, you know, be leading in that area.
Yeah. A lot of those, so totally off of like the parenting side stuff. But anyways, those states are ran a lot by like big government type programs, and government programs are financially supported by the money that's brought in through Title 4D money.
Mhm.
It's brought into most states in through the general fund. And so the money comes in and the state gets to choose how they spend it off of that. So there's no requirement that it goes any certain ways.
So
Wow.
there's definitely an incentive not to change.
And so, yeah, the state's incentive is not to change, and legislators know that. And there is every state has a Title 4D administrator who works for the Child Support Services Office, and that person is the person that the legislators go to ask if it's in the state's interest to do a shared parenting bill. And they're
The
lawyers.
ones directly getting paid and benefiting from it.
Yeah. And so it's like this paradigm, like the government's like gaslighting us through something like this. best interest of the child, right?
Wait, the government's gaslighting us? What?
Yes. Unfortunately, it seems to happen way more often than like it seems like they wouldn't do that, and they totally do. So yeah, and like the idea of best interest of the child, right? That sounds so wonderful. And that is like, yes, that is what we all want. And then they use that to then have a parent who is totally fit and willing separated for money.
Wow. And so you learned all of this by going through your own situation.
Yeah. Yes.
How long were you kept away from your son?
It was just under 2 months. And then when I got to have him, it was she worked in my office. She worked for me. So like I got to see him like come into the office. I just didn't get to like be with him. Like she'd go and lock her office door and not let me see him and stuff. And bring him in there knowing that I was there and things along those lines. And then when I got to see him, it was 2 hours twice a week for about 6 more months. So I went from
Is
seeing
there a
him-
reason they ruled? Was that a ruling that happened?
No ruling. No, it was decided on by my lawyer who I fired and her lawyer without my consent or even asking my opinion.
Because that seems pretty short. I mean, that makes sense if there's, a problem that's founded and someone needs, to be supervised or something with their kids. But so nothing happened.
Nope.
And you petitioned to have some time with your kid.
Mhm.
And they gave you 2 hours.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Twice a week. So,
And then what happened?
and then we got a guardian ad litem in place, and they came and interviewed me and went to my house and interviewed my family and friends. He made a ruling to change the parenting plan to give me 8 days a month straight. So I got to go to 8 days a month, which is actually in most people's cases a really great parenting plan. It's higher than average in a long shot. And at the same time, it was right around his first birthday when that was done. And I found out that came out like about a week before his birthday, and we were going to do a joint birthday. And she told me like 2 days before his birthday that we had to do separate birthdays, and that my time would come after that. And then the day before his birthday, she told me she was moving to South Dakota, and that's why I wouldn't get to see him for his birthday. And that's why we didn't do a joint birthday.
Wow.
Oh man, that
And
bait and switch.
yeah, but she said she was already got approval by the guardian ad litem, which was not communicated with me. Nobody talked to me about it. I had no idea this was even discussed or decided upon, and it was all done without even me knowing, or even like without even knowing, let alone.
So the guardian ad litem is able to make decisions like that?
Mhm.
Because not in Illinois, they're not.
Yeah, they're in Wyoming. They're allowed to make those decisions because they hadn't gone to the judge yet. And once the judge we had been a few times in front of the judge, but no final parenting plan had been made until we got to the final one 2.5 years. So this was 6 months later after we split, maybe 7 months after we split.
Do you think it would have gone differently if you guys had been married and then divorced?
I do not.
No.
There is no rules in Wyoming about parents moving out of the state. It's the custodial parent's prerogative to move. And they get to move for any number of reasons that they choose, and that their ability to move is not to be, and it's kind of written in the law, but that you don't have as a non-custodial parent any right to prevent them from doing what they feel is in their best interests.
Even crossing state lines.
Yep. Yeah. So they let her move 6 hours away. And I had no power or ability to make she already had moved before I even knew about it, and there was nothing to petition. So.
Wow. So what did you do from there?
At that point in time, I was really I was working on some bills. So I had worked on some bills. I actually had my son like the next week. So we did our University of Wyoming basketball game, and he was in the baby crawl and did really well and had a great time. And then he was there when I got a bill passed with one of my legislator friends on making it so if both parents don't agree to shared parenting, a judge can rule for shared parenting, which was not the rule before, but didn't mean that they had to. And so I had my son for that, and we got some bills passed, and I started really focusing on how I could help parents and kids build relationships. These non-custodial parents are just, I was emotionally like destroyed. Like I just want to be my son's dad and get to like experience his growth. And there was a period of time in that first year that I hadn't seen him in 36 days. And so it was,
Which when he sees you, he's gonna think you're a stranger by that point.
yeah. And that was, it just, and I'm a stranger. I feel like a stranger. Like, what is my son doing in 36 days when you're 9 months old is a huge amount of growth. Like,
Yeah.
who is this kid? What is he into? And there was no communication about like, oh, he's doing this and doing that, is like the only thing it was attacking and things on those lines, trying to be involved, trying to get time, and then basically using that to punish for whatever perceived crimes I was committing to his son's mom. And so it was tough. And so I made these events and stuff for dads and kids. So I started doing, I made a fishing event, and I set up a fishing day at the state park and a camping day, and had like 40 people show up, parents and kids, and had this event. And I was like, well, this is going really well, and so I got the idea to have a banquet to raise some money to do more events. And so I organized a big banquet to raise some money to change some more laws and get a shared parenting law passed in Wyoming, and had a banquet with 300 people from the community of Cheyenne coming out to support, and raised just under $40,000 to help bring about this change and support the events that I was having. And so a lot of things we really were focused on at that point in time was just relationship building activities. So going to UW basketball games, going to UW football games, which is University of Wyoming is UW. People from Wisconsin or Washington might say something different, but and so going to the University of Wyoming games and stuff, and organizing trips where a lot of families, non-custodial parents, can't afford to take their kids to do those things. Where it might cost $200 for a couple hours. And so I had groups of 30 to 50 people at these games, all sponsored by the university, so we could actually have these events. And then I think the two best ones we did that year, we started our tradition of doing double Santa Clauses. And so we do Santa Claus back-to-back weekends for free, and have a Santa Claus come into the office and have a beautiful tree set up and a backdrop and all these great things. And back-to-back weekends allows the non-custodial parent to have that opportunity with their kids, whatever the weekend is. So whatever weekend you got, you can go to a place that's supportive. And so we set those up, and then we did Easter that next year the same way. So back-to-back Easter hunts.
It's really interesting because, it's like every Wednesday night you can go to a restaurant and you can see the parent with their child, but there's no community. There's no, they're literally having their relationship over the dinner table for a couple of hours, and then every other weekend or something like that, however it's set up. And for them to have a place to go and have more normalcy where there's adults and kids, and not just a parent-child, which is two people, but it's more confusing when it's two people than when there's a line between where the parents and you're the child.
Yeah. And those parents have a scarcity around that time, right? Like I got Wednesday from 3 until 6 or 3 until 7. Like I have to get all the things in as fast as I possibly can. And so then you're pressed and you're moving, trying to like do these things. And there's that extra energy being raised because it all has to happen in such a tight amount of time.
Mm-hmm. And it could feel forced, right? And just not genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then dropping them off and you're like, oh, like, okay. Like, and then you have to wait a few more days to get to see them again. And,
Yeah.
you know, schools aren't really that supportive, you know, and even like sporting events, like I coach my son's teams and man, I mean, for me to get even communications, because his mom's the one that signs him up, is like extremely difficult. And I'm like, I'm his coach.
Yeah.
You're put down as an alternative email. And I'm like, yo, I am just as much of an email necessary as the primary parent is. Just because she filled it out doesn't mean that I get left out of emails. Like I can't sign my son up for the sport 2 times so I can be the primary parent. You know, he's only one kid. He go, you know, like
And it's an email. It's not like it costs money.
yeah, you know, the communication respect is not there, you know, and this a lot of those types of things where, you know, nobody does it on purpose, right? But as a non-custodial parent, you're like, it's just one more thing where like I'm treated as not a parent, not an equal, and I'm not worthy of the respect that a custodial parent would get.
We were just learning that in Illinois, they don't use those words anymore.
Mhm.
And they have the only words they use is who, what kind of time are you spending? But there was no such thing as custodial.
No.
They're both decision makers. Yeah, but I mean, it's not like Illinois is lovely either to
No,
get divorced in. Or
I have not heard any good things about Illinois. I could
No.
I have friends from Illinois. I could tell all kinds of bad stories about Illinois, but
Yep.
I feel like that's such an empowering thing. One of the things I was working on for one of the bills that got defeated was to change it from visitation and custodial from visitation to parenting time.
Mhm.
At my court date, I made a comment about it being a derogatory term, and it's really a put down to the parent who is not the custodial parent, that they get visitation, but they're not a parent, and that
Right.
they should be respected and called parenting time. And my judge wrote 2 paragraphs about how I was wrong and it's not parenting time and I'm a visitor to my son. And that was like 2 paragraphs of his decision,
Wow.
without informing me that I'm not a parent and I'm a visitor, and
Wow.
that yeah.
I'm sure a DNA test would clear that up, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are a parent, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, the terminology of being a visitor, you know,
Yeah.
that you are a guest, you're not even, you know, a person that
No authority,
no authority, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute, about what are the impacts on kids with a father that is not able to be empowered to be a parent.
Oh, I mean, it really runs across all the measurements that they have, you know, exponential raised instances of dropping out of high school, you know, multiple times, and suicide, homicide. If you look at the homicides of all these kids that are going around, like, you know, young adults that are killing people in these schools, and like 95% of them have no fathers in their lives, and they don't have their father in their lives. People have like a stepfather or multiple, you know, stepfathers at different points in time, but they don't have their father in their life. Obesity, I think I said high school dropout,
Drug use,
drug use,
pregnancy,
pregnancies, yep, teen pregnancies, all those things exponentially higher, you know, and I think you look across the board, you know, 3 to 7 times, depending on which thing you're looking at it. And that's a huge difference. I mean, those things happen quite a lot, but they have, you know, and then just it just keeps that system going, you know, and people being poor and being disadvantaged and unconnected.
You know, I think this is a really important discussion, because when people think about absent fathers, I think the stereotype, the connotation is that it's the father that is not taking on the responsibility. And what we're talking about here is the legal system actually becoming a hindrance, an obstacle to fathers being able to step up and take on that role.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And it was amazing how much they worked to like make me be an absent father, you know? I mean, just putting all the roadblocks in front of my way. And I have a dad right now that I was talking to just today, right before our call actually, and he was talking about how he wants to see his kid, but he doesn't have any money, you know, he's just a laborer, and nobody will take his case for under $3,500. And if you go get a packet for $500 from the courthouse, they give you like 500 pages of all kinds of legal jargon to try to figure out what to fill out and what to put where. And it's all written by lawyers for lawyers, not for an average person who just graduated from high school.
Mhm.
I mean, even for lawyers, it's complicated.
It almost seems it should be the opposite, that there should be a penalty for not stepping up and parenting
Yeah.
as opposed to you're a visitor in your child's life. Wow.
Yeah. You always feel like, oh, the deadbeat dads who don't want to be around and stuff. And I actually really feel like, and I say it all the time, that it's beat down dads, you know, that they're just beat down by a system who is constantly supporting and promoting them not being involved and engaged. And then what do you do? Like, I've already spent thousands of dollars. I've gotten nowhere, you know, when do I just give up?
Mhm.
What
Dads
happens?
for
What
years.
happens if she doesn't honor what the courts have ruled?
Contempt is what you go for. So, you know, most lawyers will tell you, well, wait 6 months, you know, and build up a bunch of contempts, right? Get a whole bunch of contempts built up to go to the court and say, hey, look at all these times that I was doing all the right things and asking, and I didn't get my kid. And I paid support the whole time, but every time I wanted to get him, they said no. And there's no requirement for the courts to do anything. And so you don't ever get that time back. And usually the court just give a slap on the wrists. And how many times do you go pay lawyers thousands of dollars to just have the other parent get slapped on the wrist? You know,
Yeah.
once or twice.
In
And
the
there's no,
meantime, you're missing out on that time with your son and, you know, the development and the growth. Yeah, that's terrible.
and they're missing out, and then they don't have that connection. And so we have this system that's really been out there promoting that. And that's one of the things that I'm working on this year within South Dakota is to get, and my friend, there was no Democrat running for office, so he was a Republican running for Senate in his district, and he beat the other two Republicans out for that role. So he is the senator from his district here in South Dakota, and so he's helping some other campaigns right now to get some people in. But once that comes, putting a bill in place that work on having actual requirements for judges to do something, because the cops will also say that they don't have any power because it's a civil matter, right? But if there was a penalty where the cops could collect money, they would enforce it. So there's just nothing, there's no financial incentive for the cops to do anything. And so they don't do stuff because there's no benefit. But if there was an actual penalty that they could then enforce, the cops would then have to do actions in support of those kids having a relationship with their parents. And so it's making those laws that are out there, you know, and a warning and, you know, some minor penalties and stuff. But then if you can't follow the rules, you know, you increase the penalty, right, as time goes on. But that it doesn't have to take 60 times of somebody being in contempt and then 3 or 4 slaps on the wrist before a judge maybe says, hey, you know, like, you got to give the kid to their parent. You know, there are real clear penalties, and a judge doesn't have a choice to just do whatever he wants.
You know, so it's one thing to kind of go through your own obstacles, hurdles, trying to do whatever you can to get as much time, but it seems like you kind of gone above and beyond, and now working with representatives and trying to pass bills, and, you know, starting an organization to really help other fathers out there struggling the same way. What prompted that for you to take that next step?
When I started going through it, I reached out to all my friends who I knew had been separated, divorced, and had kids. And all of them told me a very similar story. And I was like, why didn't you tell me this before? And they're like, oh, you know, guys don't talk about these things, you know, and so I had to like prod them to get information and get what they were feeling and what their thoughts were and stuff. And I was like, there's nobody doing this. There's nobody out there taking this on, and this is not okay. And I felt like I was in a good spot financially and court made sure they took care of that, but I was in a spot financially that I thought I had the ability to go and really put myself out there in a way that could help bring light. And so we've done support groups, and I don't have a current support group right now set up. And I'm just getting established here, so it's new, but I will have support groups again, probably on Zoom and also in person, just to give a space to talk about what's going on and how you can choose into taking care of yourself so you can be your best person when you get to have your kids again, whatever that looks like. And everybody's different. So.
And when you say you don't have anything set up here, you're talking about South Dakota right now, currently.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you moved from Wyoming to South Dakota to be closer to your son?
Yep. As soon as they let her move in 2018, I bought a house here in the fall of 2018, about October or so. And so about 4 years ago now, which is crazy to think that's been that fast. But but I owned a real estate company in Cheyenne. And so I was in the works of that at that point in time, and how could I move and do those things? So I bought this house here and rented it out while I was figuring all that logistical stuff out, and worked on another bill to get shared parenting as a standard. And in 2019, when that went before legislature, I got beat. A lot of lawyers showed up to defeat the bill. There was a dozen or two lawyers throughout the course of a 3-day period from when we went to the House committee and won to the floor and lost on the floor of the House. And at that point in time, I chose into, I sat there, I had a bunch of parents, moms, dads going through the non-custodial experience and really did a great job, but they all have jobs. And the next day, lawyers don't have jobs, not jobs like the average person does. And so I showed up because I owned a real estate company to lobby for my bill, and the lawyers showed up. And lawyers have a lot of weight and they carry a lot of respect because of their title. And so I was really working hard on getting these legislators out there, and I was focused like I'm gonna show these lawyers and I'm gonna get everybody out here. Well, it was 12-on-1, you know. I mean, the odds were stacked against me, and they called everybody out, and they were watching me call somebody out, and another or two lawyers would call the same person out after. And we're all standing in this room. It's, the lobbying room is 8 by 14 maybe. So we're all like in a room, like, we're really close together. There is no secrecy on who you're talking to in this room, and maybe on what you say, but no secrecy on who it is who's there and talking to people. And after about 3 or so hours of that, I just sat down and kind of watched them pull everybody out that I had been meeting with over and over again. And we lost on the floor, and I knew that I had to get a different approach, that I couldn't just go in there and like, we're just going to do this because it's the right thing, that wasn't going to bring the change. And
why were they so passionate about blocking this?
There's a lot of money for lawyers. It was all the family law lawyers that were there. So family law lawyers from across the state. I heard that they had an email out to bring lawyers in if they lost in the committee the night before, asking the lawyers to show up to lobby against the shared parenting bill, because there would be no fights in court unless there was somebody who was a domestic violator within the last year documented, and there would be no fights. It would just be a equal split of parenting time. And parents want to be parents to their kids. And so that's a really powerful thing. And you'll spend all your money to be a parent to your kids. And they know that everybody will. And so the family law lobby is very, very strong in every state.
And unfortunately, it comes down to money.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay more if you see your kid less.
Yes, correct. And so the goal is to minimize the amount of parenting time. And that's why they do every other weekend. And that's why on Wednesdays, most states don't let them stay the night, because they stay the night on Wednesdays. That would be another day, which would then equate to less money for the state to collect.
Yeah.
And for the state coffers. So
It's really sad.
Wow.
yeah, I know.
And I don't think the average person understands
Just-
all of that. Yeah.
My mind's
But
blown.
it's so complicated, right? And they make it complicated on purpose. If they made it really simple, everyone would get it. But it's like, so you're saying that there's all these moving parts and they all go together to like conspire against families. And wow, like that's just a really heavy realization and unfortunate truth. And there are people who care more about their dollar bill than all the families that are getting destroyed. That doesn't matter nearly as much as collecting that $300 hour check.
Well, that's why it's so easy to get married. The state doesn't care. Yeah, get married. Yeah.
Right. And you make no fault divorces, and hey, you can get divorced for any reason. You don't even need a reason. Just yeah, let's split everything up equitably, and take somebody's stuff. And it's just really sad. I think I was listening to a book on tape, and it really was fantastic. I don't know if I can pitch books, but if you want to understand the experience of this, the greatest explanation I've ever read was called The Respondent by oh my gosh, I'm going to blank on his name right now. Greg Ellis. He's an actor, and he was in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, where he's probably most well known. And he had been working on writing some movies and stuff. So very experienced writer, and actors are like expressive, and his expression of the experience of going through family court and then relating like a lot of these facts to and stuff. Beautiful use of like descriptive terms to like really paint the picture. Like you can feel it, you can smell it, you are in the experience with him. And if you want to know what that feels like, that he was amazing. Yeah, the best book I've read that describes the experience of family court and the horrors of the court. So
I think it's a really good resource for those out there that might be struggling with this.
Yeah.
You went through law school.
I did. Yeah, I graduated this May. So I am not a lawyer yet, and but I am a graduate of law school. So
and you went through law school because of your experience?
Correct. Yeah. And I chose into law school after sitting there watching the lawyers. And I said, if they're going to give these people so much credit, I'm going to choose into that. I'm going to go.
You're going to join the system to fix it from within.
Yep. And then I figured they would say no because they knew who I was, and they said yes. And so I was like, well, now I have to do this. There were people that were on the board, and I had gotten to hear a lot of like the politics dynamics of even like law school, and never realized how like political law school was. But there was a huge discussion. I got in the last day. I didn't have a choice. I got to decide on the phone call if I was in or out, because it was that late of a decision for me to be in law school. I know it was that late to apply anyways. They're like, we already have like most of our enrollments decided for this next year. And I was like, but could I do it? And they're like, I guess so, and if you pass the test and you turn your paperwork in like tomorrow. And so I did all these things like in a rush. Within 5 months, I applied, took the LSAT, got enrolled, and was in school within 5 months. So,
wow. And you were accepted late because they were debating about whether they were going to let you in?
Yeah, well, I took the last possible test. Like everything was last minute. Because they only do so many tests. Like they do like 3 a year. And so I had missed the deadline for the test before that. So everything on mine was like, last minute. And but then from when going into it, I talked with some administrators and people that were in there that supported me through it, and talked about the debates that they had about like me being in. My GPA, I was like a 2.5, 2.7 GPA kind of guy. I'm a very middle of the road college student academically, but the stuff that I had done outside of law school, outside of my academic stuff, is what gave me the opportunity to be in. But that my position and my path was very controversial.
Well, you did it.
Yeah.
What do you know about that decision making? Like who was for you and who was not, and why?
the people that were not for me were the people that were in the room. There was one of the assistant dean was in the, I don't know if I can even talk about this, but anyways, she was there lobbying against the bill, was not in favor of me. And the person that ran the family law clinic, and that another big contributor is the domestic violence clinic that they have there. She was against me. So, but there was the dean's wife, who is also a law professor there. She was in favor of me, and she taught quite a few of my classes, and she's a really fantastic lady. And a couple other administrators and stuff were in favor of having me in. So it was the family law side against everybody else. So the people that like family law and think that it should stay the way it is were not in favor of me, and those that see it as needing reform were the ones that supported me. And there's fortunately more of them.
So you won your first trial just getting into law school.
Right. I did. Yeah, it's so true. I never even thought like that. The panel, the judges decided. So
So share your vision. What's the vision?
Vision is that everywhere around the country, the world now, all of the countries now follow, everybody follows America, right? And all the states, all the countries around the world are doing this exact same model. And this is how they've designed it. And my vision is that shared parenting is the standard. Parents, by the fact that you're a parent, and if you're not a unworthy parent for child abuse, domestic violence reasons, and even some of those things I think can be rehabilitated. Child abuse maybe differently than like domestic violence, in that somebody can learn skills to be a good person, or a better person. But if you're not disqualified for whatever those reasons might be, that by the fact that you are a parent, you're worthy of that parenting, whether you are a doctor, a lawyer, or you're a construction worker, that you have value and you have worth, and your kids deserve the opportunity to learn from you and your experience as a parent. And you have the right to get to have that experience of like being connected with your kids, getting to see who your kids are, and then choosing into how do I help them become their best selves. Like, holy shit, this is a huge responsibility. Like, how do I see them and then see a way to help them be their best selves?
It sounds like innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, right. I think that's like a thing somewhere or something. I don't know. It's not,
as opposed to guilty and prove you're innocent.
Might have been one of the questions on the bar, maybe.
Like 7 of them. They like ask that over and over again. Where did the cops mess up with this? They don't want you to be innocent. They just want to make you quit, because there's no money in making you be in allowing you to be worthy. It's to find any little spot to say that you're less than, so then they can make you a visitor and take away your rights to decision making and everything else. Writing bills was a bad thing, and it showed my anger towards the system, which is probably true. So I won't fault the judge for that. And me going to law school showed my instability in my in life, which I think wanting to be a lawyer maybe unstable, but those are the things that he used against me. Those are his biggest hits on me.
He said that you going into law school showed your instability.
Yep, that I was unstable.
Wow.
Because you were working less?
Yes. And I had a good job, right? I owned a real estate company, and only an unstable person would leave a good financial job to go to school and make no money. But the way that the system's written, right? So a judge has discretion, ultimate discretion, and they take facts and prescribe meaning to those facts. And so the fact is, I chose to go to law school. He says that that's a detriment and therefore a negative for me, and he gets to decide. So he could say that, hey, going to law school, you're going to help families, you're going to make a difference, you're going to show your son that you can like go out there and have a vision and go for it and put yourself out there and on the line and make a change. And that could be a positive. But if he wants to make it be a negative, he can say, you know what, it's a negative. You're changing
Even though
law.
he made the same choice.
Right. Yeah, he made the same choice. Well,
Maybe some judges, like in Texas,
Yeah.
you can be a judge and not go to the law school.
true. He went to law school. I won't talk about him and his character outside of that. He knows his history and stuff, and I know it also. And unfortunately, a person who doesn't value being a father is a person making decisions about other people getting to be fathers.
It's very unfortunate.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's it's and I feel like there's a lot of that out there that it's in the family law system and stuff, going like reading the books and being part of it. You get to just see kind of how they take the human out of the experience and make it a non-human decision. And we're all humans trying to build relationships and grow and develop. And they take that humanness out of people in family court.
And what kind of support do you need in order to accomplish this vision?
You know, that's a really good question. I feel like well, everybody needs money, so always need money. But what I really need is people to be aware and not to be aware and be passive, but to stand up for what they believe to be right. And support families being as engaged and supported as possible. And divorce and separation are an awful thing. And nobody, I think, goes to get married or has a relationship with the vision of those things being the end result. And they don't have to be a winner take all proposition, that it can be a win-win, thing in the end. And that instead of going into these things and having lawyers run them, which I'm a lawyer now, and my mom has said that, well, if you change all these laws, how are you gonna make any money? And I'm like, well, if I change all these laws, there'll still be divorces, there'll still be issues that come up. Not everybody's gonna be Jesus Christ, which is unfortunate and reality. And this stuff will still happen. And we don't have to have this life or death fight to be in your kids' lives. And kids deserve to have both their parents as involved and healthy as possible without a huge financial and emotional and physical drain on their family. And kids deserve better. And I think,
So you need a community.
yeah.
You
Yep.
need a stronger voice
Yep.
that's backed by like-minded people.
Correct.
Mhm.
Exactly. And then people standing up together. And I feel like we live in a apathetic culture where, like, I'm going to put a like on his Facebook post, and that meme was great. But then when it comes to like, hey, let's meet at the courthouse and like have a discussion on the steps, that requires like leaving the football game on Sunday night. And I would rather just sit around my house and watch football, or, getting up and doing that stuff is just too much. And we need people to stand up for what is right and take that initiative and be engaged, be there to do the things that are going to move us forward, be committed, be focused, be compassionate. And if you know somebody's going through this stuff, to reach out to them and ask them questions and support them in their vulnerability, because people going through custody cases are men especially, are 8 times more likely to commit suicide going through a custody or after a custody divorce than if not. And make suicide a lot as it is, 8 times more is a significant number of people. And reaching out to them, asking them how you can support them, and then listening and then giving it to them so they can be healthy, or just reaching out, let them know that you care, that you're there,
In what ways do you see, Kids Deserve Dads providing that support, for those in need out there?
Yeah. I mean, on Facebook, I am an army of one at the moment, and self-imposed, but I answer all the texts all the messages. I answer all the phone calls. I give everybody my personal cell phone number, because I know that I needed that. And because of that experience that I had, I don't want anybody to be without. And so, I'm working on building like a support center and a support staff who can answer phone calls and stuff and be there for people. I get probably a dozen a week or so that reach out. So that's a manageable number. And my intention is that it's much larger than that, unfortunately. And just, being a safe place that people can come to. It is really disempowering, and to go through that experience, you feel like you have like your whole life, was the idea that I had any control over my experience an illusion, because I have absolutely zero now. And how do you help somebody come to terms with that reality and be okay with it? And it really is just about being empathetic and allowing them to just dump, and and being okay with that void of like telling, and letting people just get that out and be clean and be open to like sharing, because I think that's where it turns into this despair and other things, because you really feel disempowered and there's nobody out there who understands or can support you.
Zac, if someone wanted to learn more about the organization or to get a hold of you or get in contact with you, how would they do that?
The best way is to call me on my phone, 307-256-6257, or an email at Kids Deserve Dads, SD@gmail.com. I am making a Kids Deserve Dads email with my website. I just have not made it yet. And it'll likely be Zac@kidsdeservedads.us. Will be where the email is going to be at. And Zac is spelled Z-A-C. So I may actually do like Zac with like the C, the H, and the K, since you can spell Zac in many different ways.
Probably a good idea.
Right. And currently the current website is kidsdeservedads.us.
Yes, correct.
Zac, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. This is it's really important work, and we are really happy to be able to spread the word as much as we can.
And we see it. We see the impact of dads not being in kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, there's a lot of dads who do choose out, and that's their choice, but we shouldn't force being out on people who really want to be there to love and support their kids.
Mhm.
And so,
Absolutely.
I'm fully committed to being that change, and it's my life purpose. So thank you for allowing me to share this time with you guys and be present here with you.
We want to thank all of you for joining us today on Couple Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners. For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, the home study course, the Couples Weekend Intensive, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.